I want to talk about 6 Speedmasters that you rarely hear about because they're probably the worst Speedmasters in the history of the Speedmasters. Come join me. Hey YouTube, this is Kurt Brown. I'm your host. This is the Watch Factory in the News. In today's episode, I want to talk about Omega Speedmaster. And before you get curious about where am I going with this, I have been tracking down this book called A Moon Watch Story by Graham, The Extraordinary Destiny of the Omega Speedmaster. I have been tracking this book down, kind of cataloged a number of the Speedmasters, and having watched some videos on YouTube, I really wanted to have it in my collection. For those that know me, I not only collect watches, but I collect a number of watch books, especially books that tell the history of the brands, Rolex, AP, books on the Reverso and things like that. And so I want to talk about 6 Speedmasters that you rarely hear about because they're probably the worst Speedmasters in the history of the Speedmaster. Many of us have known that the Speedmaster has been in existence since the late 1950s, and then had an amazing run of producing a number of models, some that are the professionals, some that are the reduced, some that are non-professional across the year. And so when I found out about this book, it really gave me an interest to try to acquire, because it not only told the story of how the Speedmaster ended up on the moon and as a part of the Apollo, but it also cataloged every Speedmaster. Most of you know that the first Speedmaster was released in 1957. To my surprise, until I started reading the book, I did not realize that in 1957, the actual dial and hand variation is not what we normally see today. I always thought that, and this is why sometimes reading is important, I always thought that the Speedmaster, or the broad arrow Speedmaster, was kind of after the fact. And looking at the book, the actual first Speedmaster in 1957, reference CK2915, actually was a broad arrow Speedmaster. And one of the reasons why I tell so many people, dig into the archives, look into the history, is because you find things that you just otherwise wouldn't know or hear about online. And so I'm going to talk about the 6 ugliest Speedmasters in the history of Omega. Now to start, let's be honest. The Speedmaster has been in existence since 1957, and it's still pumping out releases today. I think this book cataloged well over maybe 40 or 50, and I don't even think even then, if we talk about slight variations, slight re-editions, it captures everything. So the Speedmaster by far is still an iconic model. It's a groundbreaking model. Every collector's collector will reference or speak to either having it in the collection or having had it in the collection. Really quick before we jump in, I even want to call out again, why I advocate for reading on a history of brands. You know, my Speedmaster actually was released in 2000, and I didn't realize that my Speedmaster has more design aesthetics that tie back to the original from 1957 than what you normally would think of when you think of kind of like the black dial Speedy. I didn't know in 1957 that the first release of the Speedmaster came with a broad arrow hand, and even the sub-resistors kind of had that similar kind of flared out kind of sword kind of hand. That the original Speedmaster was a stainless steel bezel. Now this is not stainless steel, this is white gold, but it's got more of an aesthetic to that one than what we normally see with the aluminum insert. Just food for thought of why it's always cool to kind of take some time out and dig into the history of certain brands, because you uncover some crazy things. So let's jump into our first Speedmaster that I want to talk to you guys about, that I think is probably one of the ugliest Speedmasters that was ever created, and one that I didn't know actually existed until I started digging in. Almost 20 years, just slightly, and I'm going to show you the Speed Sonic Lobster. This is reference 388-0800. Now, the book says, first Speedmaster with a tuning fork movement featuring a wrist band shape, after which it was nicknamed a lobster. And so basically, the dial kind of has similar aesthetics of the traditional Speedy, minus the fact that it's an actual day-date, which I thought was actually really cool. But the case actually looks like it's almost the arm of a transformer that shapes out, and that's where they get the idea of it being called the Speed Sonic Lobster. I mean, I would assume that this thing was just like unbreakable at all counts, but also just a really crazy look. It's the 70s. We were crazy. We were still crazy on space exploration. We were still crazy on, you know, creatures of the lagoons and things like that. So I can see that, but also just to see the fact that you got this beautiful kind of quartz movement, this tuning fork movement. I wonder what these watches are going for in today's market, or if you could even find one, but just an overall interesting look, or what is considered to be a part of the Speedmaster DNA. So that was in 1974. Then we jumped to what was called the Speedy Quartz. And I thought this was really interesting because of this. This is reference 1860004. It's the first Speedmaster Professional equipped with quartz movement. So just like everyone else that was recognizing quartz as the future of where we were going to go, Omega said, I'm going to put out a Speedy Professional. What I like is that it almost has that look and feel of like our beloved like Casio, right? But it's got like the days of the week below it. You've got the split light. You got the start stop. It's called the chronograph, right? It's got all those features. Then it actually gives you a highlight of what the movement actually looked like, and it actually had 2 batteries added to it, which is interesting because I think the last time I seen a 2-battery quartz movement from the 70s was below those Computron. So very interesting piece, not something that you would want to see. I'll be honest, if I could get a hold of this one, I would definitely put this on the wrist. Sticking to that, they also released in the same year what they call the Speedmaster Quartz. So this was the non-professional version. This one was actually in kind of that cushion shaped or square shaped variation versus the circular one. So this had the quartz movement. They call it the barrel shape. This was reference 386.0805. Kind of what you've come to kind of expect for a quartz square case watch in the 1970s, right? Not bad at all. I probably picked the circular one if I could, but very, very interesting. 1982, and I'm not sure where this is going, and the reason why is that, let me show you 1983. Kind of looks like classic Speedmaster. We've got our dial design, we've got kind of our dial shape kind of under lock and key, and we're moving in that direction. And then we release this thing, and this actually makes me think about Tag Heuer's early watches of the 80s. So I don't know if that was something because we were going with integrated bracelets that it was going there. But this is reference 3450803. The first Speedmaster with the so-called Teutonic shape, typically of the 1980s, right? So kind of an integrated bezel kind of setup. The dial seems extremely muted. Definitely nothing that you would think would ever be a part of the actual Speedmaster. Then they take that same shape 4 years later and keep going with it. They go in with a black dial, but this time they call it the Teutonic Moon Face. This is reference 3450810. And this one's in titanium. Now the last one is a bit of a stretch, in my opinion, as being like one of the ugliest ones. It's just kind of so far-fetched from what we are used to kind of seeing classically, and especially for it to be kind of in the neoclassic range, meaning like in the last like 25 years. This is the 1998 release of what's called the X33. This is reference 329050. This is the second Speedmaster that was approved by NASA for a space shuttle, nicknamed the Mars Watch, and just a 4-pusher Speedmaster, obviously quartz, right? You've got the broad arrow hand, right? You've got the sweeping seconds hand, but just a very extreme variation of what you're expecting to see now that Speedmasters has kind of gotten to their rhythm and everything like that. So All in all, I think it's interesting. What I love about Speedmasters, and what really more so about Omega, is that they're going to continue to evolve on the overall design. It's a coveted model in the lineup, but it's interesting just to see the history of where the Speedmaster has gone and where it continues to go.